Hello, everyone. Welcome to this healing channel. I called it Healing Channel because I approach both my life and also my work with clients very holistically. I always try to encompass the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual aspects of humanity. And therefore, the content of this channel will be multifaceted, diverse, pick out what you need and discard what you don't. So today I would like to raise more awareness and education around what is referred to the gut, heart, brain axis, which is a kind of a communication network in our bodies and in our systems, and which I feel is really important and quite crucial for maintaining our overall health. And I could not imagine a better person being here today and enlighten us more in this matter. And I would like to introduce my dear friend, Dr. Vanessa Kuwajima.
Oh, thank you so much, Cornelia. It's a true pleasure and an honor to be here with you and with your guests. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Kuwajima is a board-certified gastroenterologist with expertise in esophageal motility disorders, women's health in gastroenterology, and quality improvement in endoscopy. Dr. Kuwajima's career spans academic medicine and private practice, where she has served as fellowship program director, associate professor, and now as managing partner at the Florida Digestive Health Specialists. She's also very dedicated to advancing patient-centered care, mentoring the next generation of physicians, fostering professional identity formation, and integrating clinical excellency with effective healthcare leadership. Did I miss anything?
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for the kind and warm introduction.
Okay, so let's move straight into this subject. So, gut,
Mhm.
heart, brain, all three
Yes.
contain these neural networks by themselves, and they all talk to each other, which is really fascinating as I
Mhm.
understand it. And could you please, Dr. Kuwajima, lead the way into what this actually is and what is actually going on?
Absolutely, Cornelia. Thank you so much. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about something that many, if not all of us, feel intuitively, but we don't always have the language to describe. And that is the deep connection between our guts and our brains, right? We often think of digestion, mental and physical health as being separate systems, when in reality, they are in constant dynamic communication, as you said. Okay, so it is indeed a network, as you mentioned, and this network is called the gut brain axis. And I truly believe that understanding it can completely transform how we think about stress, about mood, about immunity, and overall physical and mental and emotional well-being. Okay, so just to introduce the concept, let's just start with a basic definition. What is the gut-brain axis? So it is a two-way communication system between the digestive tract and the central nervous system, right? You're talking about your brains. So, but it's not just like a simple phone line or a cable or a wire. It is truly a network. It is multidimensional conversation between different systems, as you mentioned. So we have five components to that system. First, we have the enteric nervous system, which is often referred to as our second brain, right? I used to tell my fellows, my trainees, like Many times people ask me why I chose gastroenterology, but oh gosh, the gut is amazing. So the enteric nervous system comprises over 100 million neurons, right? So this is the most amount of neurons outside of the central nervous system. Guess where they're at? They are lining the gut. So that's our enteric nervous system. So our gut has its own nervous system. The second component to that gut-brain axis is the autonomic nervous system, right? And a lot of us learned this in school. This is the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems, the fight or flight, rest and digestive system, right? The third component would be hormones and neurochemicals, and that's how cells sometimes talk to each other. So those chemicals that circulate throughout our bodies. So those are the hormones and neurochemicals. The fourth part of the system is the immune signaling, and we all know how important the immune system is for our health and well-being. And finally, the fifth, and again, the one potentially closest to my heart, given my specialty, is the gut microbiome, which is the trillions of microorganisms that live in our guts in symbiosis. And they're just not living there. They're actively influencing our health and doing things for our own bodies. So we truly live in harmony. Yes, ma'am. So that's the introduction. I hope, yes, that kind of lays the groundwork for our discussion.
Thank you so much. This is you've really structured it really nicely. For our listeners, what is I think that's often kind of people are wondering about. There's also some things referred to the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in our system starters. And how is that connected and how important is that, this huge nerve inside our bodies to this gut-heart-brain axis?
Yes, Cornelia. Yeah, excellent question. So actually, at the very center of this communication system that I mentioned, the gut-brain axis, is the vagus nerve, right? So the vagus nerve is the largest nerve in our body. It is the 10th cranial nerve. It travels from the, brainstem all the way throughout our bodies to your chest and abdominal cavities. And I wanted to imagine the vagus nerve like a superhighway, right? Running through here, our brain stems through our bodies, chest and abdomen, right? And what it does. So most of the traffic, if you're going to use the highway analogy, so most of the traffic of the vagus nerve actually travels upwards. It travels from the gut to the brain, about 80% of this traffic, if you were to count the nerve fibers, right? So what that means is that the brain is constantly listening to what's happening in our bodies, right? So this is how our brains keep tabs on what's below the brain, right? So that's the vagus nerve, right? And the vagus nerve is, when it's activated, it really controls the rest and digestive state in our body. So it slows the heart rate, it slows our breathing becomes deeper, and the body shifts into digestion and repair mode. Okay. So that's the opposite of the fight or flight response. So that is the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, right? And that's the healing, that's the state that promotes healing within. This nerve also controls digestion, right? The vagus nerve controls the digestive system. And through this signaling, the digestive system regulates stomach acid, pancreatic enzyme, all the digestive enzyme secretions, the gut motility, the rate of nutrient absorption, and even the appetite hormones. Now, that could be a completely separate talk. Everybody now knows about GLP-1s and all that. So that's a topic for the future. But just think, there's a link there, okay? And then it also, importantly, the vagus nerve helps regulate inflammation. because the vagus nerve is part of the body's natural intrinsic anti-inflammatory mechanisms, right? We mentioned when the vagal tone. So if you think about a nerve being kind of like a muscle, which it isn't, but if in the mind it helps sometimes to think like that. When you have a strong muscle, the muscle works well. So if you think when you have a good vagal tone, when I have a healthy vagal nerve response, then the immune system is also well balanced. And it helps us being balanced and fight disease properly, and decrease inflammation in the body. And of course, when it's weak, it's when inflammatory processes can settle in and create a whole host of problems with the body.
This is amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Kuwajima. There's been in the mainstream medicine media now, there's more and more talk about serotonin and how it's, mostly produced in the microbiome in the gut. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is not even new knowledge. That's been known in the gut scene, so to
Yeah.
speak, since the 1930s or 1940s, but it's now becoming more mainstream knowledge. And how does these chemicals, and how does the microbiome influence actually the brain?
Oh
Can
my
you
gosh.
tell us more about that? Because I know this is a big subject too. I know we could go on and on, but we have a limited amount of time. And please tell us more about that.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And again, this is one of my favorite topics ever. Of course, given my specialty. Oh my gosh, the gut microbiome is absolutely amazing. So, did you know so if you think about us human beings, there are more cells in the microbiome than there are human cells by number, right? That's amazing. So if you go by number, we are mostly microbiome, right? Okay, a little GI humor, but seriously. Um, so there are trillions of bacteria and other microorganisms that live in our gut, right? And we think of them, so a lot what we think about them is in the role of digestion, and they of course help us digest nutrients. They play a huge role in nutrition, but they also play a huge role in the neurotransmitter production. And that's what you mentioned about the serotonin, that 90% plus of the serotonin in the body is actually synthesized in our guts. And that's just by the influence of our microbiomes.
I just want to really quickly add to our viewers, serotonin is the chemistry in our system that is also referred to our mood stabilizer. Yeah, so
Of course, exactly. And not just serotonin. Also, we talk about GABA, and dopamine. Everybody kind of knows a little bit about dopamine. So those are very heavily influenced by our microbiome. And the microbiome also plays into the immune function. If you think about our guts, they are an interface. I like to think about that as an interface between the outside world and the inside world, right? So we eat something from the outside and it enters our bodies, and on the inside, as it goes through the digestion, is that interface. So of course, our immune system, the gut has a super robust immune systems, and then we can talk about all the immunoglobulins and the immune response. But so that immune is really influenced by the gut microbiome, right? So they help us shape our bodies, identify friends and foes, what we should fight, what we should allow within us. And that's a very complex interaction on itself. Immunology, oh my goodness, that's a very extensive subject, and the gut microbiome plays a big role. And also stress hormone regulation, right? So we think about stress hormones such as cortisol. They can be also, believe it or not, influenced by your gut microbiome and vice versa. It is a two-way relationship, right? Stress affects the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome composition can also affect the stress response, so vice versa. And finally, indirectly to that, one can also, think about on a higher level our mood and our behavior, like right on a deeper level, because those are influenced by what? Stress, our overall well-being, our immune function, our neurotransmitters, everything is connected. So I hope that answers your question, Cornelia.
Yeah, and you're doing such a wonderful job, and I have so many more questions how we can do this. But I really want to give it a compact setting, and otherwise we would be here for 3 hours probably. So basically, and this is what we keep hearing as well, it is if you have a healthy gut, you
Mhm,
have a healthy immune system. And
mhm,
at the same time, don't get too stressed out because otherwise, your gut microbiome is going to be eroded through that. So it's a catch 22. So you have to kind of keep everything going and healthy. And this is why it's so complex, because it is not just, we cannot just look at one organ. It is a complex system that talks to itself, each other.
mhm,
Um, what would you say are potential real health implications
mhm,
of the gut-brain axis, and when it is in balance and
mhm.
when it is completely out of balance? Can you give us some examples for that? What
Yes.
you see maybe in your
Mhm,
practice, or I
mhm,
mean, I'm sure you come across that all the time.
mhm. I do. Thank you so much, Cornelia. And as you just said, it's a big part of my practice, you know. And for the record, of course, I'm a gastroenterologist, but I'm also, fundamentally a internist. Like the pathway for us to become GI providers, we have to do internal medicine. So we have to be very cognizant of all the different body systems and how they relate to each other, right? So
Yeah, and I also think that GI, people talking about GI doctors, often they're not aware. All they think about is the stomach, but it actually starts in the mouth. It goes all the way through you work your way through so many different systems. And I think a lot of people don't see it that way. They just look at oh, GI, it's intestines, or GI. No, it's esophagus. It does, digestion begins in the mouth.
absolutely, absolutely. And again, as we are talking about today about the gut-brain axis, so here is the gut, but here are all these other systems that are
Mhm.
connected to the gut. It's truly a network, right? The body is one, and then the days, all the systems are connected. But again, that would be a 24-hour talk if you were to expand that. But going back here to your question, the health implications of a healthy gut, um, I would like to mention also, we're going to talk about a little bit about health, but also how stress feeds into the system, right? As you mentioned, like, I see this so much on my patients. We see this in the world, and you can look at the worldwide prevalence of stress and anxiety and mood disorders kind of going up and up and up, right? And one of the things that really affect the gut brain axis is stress, because when we are under chronic stress, our fight and flight systems take over. And then I mentioned a little bit about the vagal tone. Our vagal tone drops. So if you think about the role of stress hormones back in evolution, when we were chased by tigers in the jungle, yes, you gotta have a fight or flight response. You see a threat, you gotta be able to survive that threat. So now the heart pumps up blood and your muscles are activated and you're able to run and get to safety. And that's healthy. That's supposed to be like that. But that's not what I'm talking about. That's episodic stress. We're supposed to be able to respond to that, right? If you're crossing the street and a car is coming, of course your body's going to respond and going to run. You're going to do something. But what I'm talking about is chronic stress. So chronic stress really dwindles your vagal tone and our ability to respond to stress in general, right? So chronic stress, again, it drops our vagal tone. It also affects our digestion. And I see this a lot. A lot of my patients have irritable bowel syndrome, leaky gut, and a variety of GI complaints. So the digestion also becomes slower, becomes irregular. And we can talk about the physiology a little bit, but people have pinpointed this on a physiological level, even to blood flow being affected, blood flow to the gut being affected by stress. And then when that happens, of course, the gut lining becomes more permeable, and then you have issues with leaky gut, which again, another separate talk, but you feel it overall that can lead to systemic inflammation, right? So that again, it ties to inflammation and immunity, and chronic inflammation in the body it's just not good for the whole body for many different reasons. So stress can be very disrupting to the system. And again, the vagal nerve is there right in the center. So we gotta, promote a good vagal tone and well-being, right? And essentially promote a healthy response to stress as opposed to chronic stress, which is what we're seeing, right? Our current lifestyles, all the socioeconomic pressures, our current living circumstances. Unfortunately, modern living is fertile grounds for chronic stress. So then again, that's perhaps another talk about stress management, but I just want listeners to know how that ties into the gut-brain axis. So as you're talking about the health implications then, right? So all those multiple systems can become affected. So essentially, as I mentioned, digestive health, things like irritable bowel syndrome, functional dyspepsia, bloating, constipation, diarrhea are very common symptoms, and that's affected to the gut-brain axis and the vagal tone and our response to stress, right? So that's like physical. Importantly, too, perhaps even more so, mental and emotional health, right? We talked about the neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, and how like the gut produces and influences these neuroactive chemicals. And when you have an imbalance in those chemicals, it can contribute to anxiety, depression, irritability, sleep deprivation and sleeping problems, disturbances, memory, concentration issues like brain fog, as we say, like in more generic terms. And people can just feel like on the edge or foggy when
So
system
you're
is.
saying, sorry,
Mhm.
but so you're
Yeah.
saying it also can affect us in a cognitive way, but
Yes.
also in our moods, correct?
Absolutely. Also in our moods. Absolutely. And again, a separate talk of in itself. Okay, but I'm just going to say there is very good evidence for a link in the gut dysbiosis and neurocognitive disorders. We are talking about Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, right? So it does tie to cognition as well. Um, and then, of course, that also I was talking about the immune function and inflammation and immune health. It ties up to that too, right? Because some of those cognitive disorders, there is perhaps, an inflammatory component. You see, everything is intertwined. And as I mentioned, 70% of the immune system, like the gut is very is it is an interface, and it's really such a pivotal system for immune function. So 70% of the immune system actually resides in the gut. And when the gut brain axis is imbalanced or disrupted, inflammation can increase. As I mentioned, that can contribute to autoimmune disorders. And autoimmune disorders are very common, as we all know, particularly in women. Chronic pain, chronic fatigue, again, those are very common symptoms. Food sensitivities and digestion, right? And again, and it ties again to the vagal tone and the immune function, right? So, and finally, like on the health, and tied to this as well, to the inflammation and immune function, and is the metabolic health, right? The gut-brain communication influences our energy levels, influences our appetite, our blood sugar control, our weights, right? And that in turn influences our mood, influences our well-being. So it's a two-way street, right? Those systems are connected, and it's bi-directional. I know everyone, again, just tying it up, and this could be another separate talk, but everybody knows about the importance of gut hormones, including GLP-1, right? And how there are different effects in the digestion, but also in the brain. And the effects now we know, well, we have known for a while, but now we have more research on this, and how those so-called gut hormones really they go outside the gut and even have cognitive, mental effects, including addiction. Right now, GLP-1s are being used, for instance, to decrease like alcohol consumption and all sorts of things. So that's the overlap between mood disorders and the gut and the physiology and immunology in our bodies, right? So I hope that helps you with your
Yes.
question, Cornelia.
Thank you so much. This
Yeah.
is incredible. And again, it just opens up so many questions, but I think you've so much clarify and paint a clear picture of the how crucial this system is in our bodies. Um, One last topic that, and I'm sure you know, to help our listeners as well. Um, how can we all, and what is the best way to support a healthy gut heart brain axis, and in terms of food, in terms of our diet? I mean, it's a well-known subject now that any kind of sugars is like throwing kerosene on fire for the inflammation, the inflammatory response in your body. So, what can we do, and how to best adapt a reasonably healthy diet for us to stay in sync with this system?
Thank you so much. Thanks, Cornelia. So yeah, so I think that is perhaps, the meat of the conversation is, so we talked about the gut-brain axis and how important the system is, and how it can influence disease. But on the flip side, so that's the good news, is that the system is highly responsive to our lifestyle choices, right? So that's the plus side, right? So we can help support a healthy gut-brain communication through several ways. As you mentioned, dietary patterns, our diets are very important because you want to be able to nourish our bodies, to nourish our gut cells, and to nourish our microbiome well, right? So to do that, there's a lot of evidence, fiber-rich foods. I cannot undermine this, the role of natural dietary fiber, how crucial it is to our microbiome and to our health. When we eat fiber, think about it, a lot of the fiber we consume is non-digestible, which means we are not eating it for our own cells, we are eating it to nourish our microbiome because they feed on the fiber, right? And it promotes a healthy microbiome and a healthy gut. Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you give us a really quick, like, healthy fiber food and unhealthy fibered food? Just a couple of,
Okay.
so that our listeners know exactly.
Yes, absolutely. So there are two different kinds of fiber, if you want to think like that, soluble and insoluble fiber. And that's what it implies. Like soluble fiber, it is dissolvable in like water-based solutions, like in our bodies, mostly water. Insoluble fiber is not. It's more of a bulking agent. Soluble fiber can be broken down more by our bodies. Insoluble fiber cannot. But again, it fits the microbiome. The good news is that most food sources, like fruits and vegetables and whole grains, they have both soluble soluble and insoluble fiber in different ratios. So you don't have to worry so much about soluble versus insoluble, but you do need to worry a little bit about the amount. So typically for a adult, and again, our dietary guidelines, depends a little bit of an age. So depends on your age a little bit, but on a safe bet, 25 to 30 grams of fiber daily, dietary fiber is what I would recommend, okay, to help promote a healthy gut. So great fiber sources, you all know it, fruits and vegetables, any kind of plant-based food. um, Whole grains are also good sources of fiber, but not as much as you would expect. So I really encourage listeners to read labels, right? And see how much fiber is there in a cup of oatmeal, how much fiber is there in a cup of brown rice. Contrast that, how much fiber is there in a cup of spinach or kale, right? So read the labels, but typically 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day is a good starting point. Now, there are also fiber supplements out there, right? And I think not everything is for everyone. I have a lot of my patients, they say, oh, I started fiber supplement and now I'm feeling more bloating. And you can in the beginning. So I would encourage, listeners to talk to their healthcare providers about a little bit if a certain fiber does not agree with them. Typically, I'm not very fond of fiber supplements that have additives, artificial colors, and artificial sweeteners. You're trying to make your body healthier, so why mask that by artificial stuff? So if you're going to use psyllium fiber, use organic, plain psyllium fiber, right? So I tend to be more of the natural path for that. Glucomannan fiber is also wonderful. It comes from the cognac root. Anyway, 100% natural. So that's what I would recommend for fiber.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. And I was talking about the diet, so yes, diet's pivotal. So we talk about the fiber, but we're
Yes.
also talking about other things like prebiotics, like fermented foods. We're talking about our kimchi and
Sauerkraut, of course.
sauerkraut. Of course, you're German.
That's my
Sauerkraut.
domain.
Yeah,
Kimchi for you.
yes,
Well,
kimchi
not
and
quite, but yeah.
yeah, and of course, miso soup. Yes, all those things are very good.
Miso, that's right. Miso
Miso,
soup. Forgot
fermented,
about
yeah.
that. That's great.
And then like omega 3s, you want your healthy fats. They're also very nourishing um, to the gut lining, and foods that are rich in polyphenols, like grapes, like berries and things like that. Antioxidant type foods are very, very nourishing. So that's the diet component. Other things you can do to help support a healthy gut-brain axis include practices that strengthen vagal tone. So I think that's really in your alley. You talk about deep breathing, you're talking about meditation, even like, mindfulness, singing, humming, regular exercise. Of course, those are all things that will help take care of your vagal tone, stress reduction, right? Even small changes like mindful pauses or breaks throughout the day, they can help us be mindful, and they contribute to a good healthy vagal tone. It's like you're working out your vagus nerve, right? You're giving an opportunity to be healthy. um, like in some places, like in some temples, right, when you go for like a day of mindfulness or meditation, they have bells, and every time the bell rings, it's a reminder, take a deep breath and and be in the moment, right? You can set routines like that in your own daily, in your own life, to kind of promote that wellness. Even if you have a small amount of times in the day, it can add up. So, and then finally, I think having quality sleep is very, very important. We cannot undermine the importance of good sleep. Sleep deprivation is very detrimental to your gut microbiome and to our moods, right? And our nervous system regulation. Healthy sleep promotes wellness, promotes, feeding too, our gut microbiomes, because we need that, right? We need that restorative periods in our daytime to promote healing and repair. So it's really important also, as I mentioned, the stressors of modern life, right, sometimes can infringe in our sleep. So it's very important that we take that back, right? Make sure you have restful sleep. The exact amount varies, from person to person, but generally speaking, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, quality sleep, let our minds rest, and there's a whole host of things we can do for sleep hygiene. Again, perhaps another talk, but just a few things. Make sure you get enough sleep. Make sure also that it's quality sleep. That means, don't take your cell phone to the bed with you, right? Like this day and age, I know I have kids too, and I have teenagers and young adults. I know how it is. People are constantly on their cell phones, scrolling down, checking social media before. Don't do that before bedtime. It's nice to set in a routine, whatever relaxes you. If it is a cup of chamomile tea, if it is a little bit of meditation, if it is a little bit of nighttime yoga, whatever it is, to help you have a good night's sleep. So those are all things, those are all habits, right? That things that we can consciously do to help support a healthy gut-brain axis.
Dr. Kuwajima, thank you so much. This has been really enlightening. I hope our listeners can gain as much out of it as they can. And thank you for bringing it into a holistic arena as well, and conveying so many natural things that can be done without medication or without before you need to go there. There are other ways of solving certain things. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
It is my pleasure and honor, Cornelia. Thank you so much. It has really been a lot of fun having you. Thank you for having me in your space. And I really look forward to our next session. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so if anybody is more interested, if you want to find Dr. Kuwajima, I will post her link below, but it's actually vanessakuwajimamd.com. Look for the link. There will be a part 2 of this topic, the gut-heart-brain axis, and I'll be doing that myself next time. It will be talking about the energy system, more the metaphysical side of this very physical system and what's going on the other side. And so watch this space, look out for part 2. And thank you so much for listening today. And again, thank you, Dr. Kuwajima, for your contribution today. Much appreciated. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.